Hi, story lovers. Welcome once again to Temple Timeless Tale and to the Whispers of the Ancestors, Episode 10, The Whispering Gourd. It began in the season of heavy rains, when the rivers swell and the sky grows restless. A farmer, old and childless, found a strange gourd in the middle of his field, one he had not planted. It paused with quiet life. Its skin bore markings like fingerprints pressed by time. When he lifted it, the wind stopped, and in the silence it whispered, "Guard me. Listen. Warn the blood that follows." He did not understand it fully, but he obeyed. That night, his wife conceived. By moon's end, he was a father. And the gourd, now cradled on the family altar, began its long watch. The farmer, Adesola, and his wife, Chikere, sat by a flickering fire, their gazes fixed on the strange gourd. Chikere questions its origin, but Adesola insisted he had never seen it like. It recounted how when he picked it up, the wind had ceased, and a whisper had reached him, "Guard me. Listen. Warn the blood that follows." Chikere, concerned, wondered what blood he referred to, as they had no children. Adesola, however, looked at his wife with a strange hope, a silent question passing between them as a slow understanding dawned on Chikere. The fourth child, Ayomide, grew during the war years, a son born of a whispered promise. His youth shaped by the distant echoes of the conflict, by the relentless beat of recruitment drums. Ayomide, 16, strong and eager, polished his spear. The gourd, older now, rested on a shelf, its markings seemingly deepening with time. His mother, now in her 70s, watched him with a worried expression. She pleaded with him, recounting how his late father had spoken of the gourd's wisdom, its warnings. But Ayomide scoffed, dismissing it as an old tale. What did a gourd know of a war of honor? He questioned. Suddenly, a low rustling sound emanated from the gourd. His mother urged him to listen. A voice urged. The whispering grew louder. A dry, peppery rustle forming words. "Do not go." The drum beats leads to ruin. Ayomide stared at the gourd, then laughed. A false nervous sound. He dismissed it as the wind, or his own nerves. His destiny, he declared, was on the battlefield. not tied to an old vegetable. Ignoring his mother's desperate pleas, he marched out of the hut. The drums growing louder as he disappeared, leaving his mother to look at the gods. Her shoulders slumping as the whispering faded. He marched into battle and returned with one arm and a haunted guest. The drums of war had indeed led to ruin, not glory. It never danced again. Years later, Ayomide, now in his 30s, sat by the fire, whittling wood with his remaining hand. The god watched him silently from the shelf. He tried to hum a tune, but it died in his throat. His younger sister, Efe, bright and observant, asked why he no longer danced. He flinched, his gaze falling to his missing arm. Some things, he said, once broken, could not be put back. Efe reminded him that the grandmother had always said the god knew, that they had told him not to go. Ayomide glared at the god, then looked away. A flicker of pain and regret in his eyes. He admitted bitterly that the god had whispered of ruin, and he had foolishly thought he spoke of weakness. He had been wrong. The second child, Efe, was a woman of trade. Ambition in her footsteps. She saw opportunities where others saw obstacles. Her mind always calculating the path of prosperity, driven by a fierce desire to ensure her family would never suffer as Ayomide had. Efe, now in her 30s, sharp and confident, stood before a large, honored contract. A shoddy merchant smiled unconsciously, promising magnificent fortune if she would only sign. The god, older and more faded, sat on a less prominent shelf in the corner. As Efe reached for the girl, the god began to hum, a low, insistent vibration. She paused, questioning the sound. The merchant dismissed it as a draft, urging her not to let it distract her from her fortune. The humming intensified, becoming a distant, urgent whisper. Do not sign. The pen is poison. Efe pulled her hand back, looking directly at the god. The merchant smiled, questioning her as thoughtfulness. Efe looked from the god to the contract, then back at the god. A small dismissive laugh escaped her lips. Old things don't know newcomers, she scoffed. This is my chance. My family will thrive because of this. With a flourish, she snatched the god and signed. The humming from the god stopped abruptly. replaced by a sudden heavy silence. The merchant, with a predatory grin, quickly gathered the contract and exited. Efe stood alone, the silence in the room suddenly oppressive. She looked at the god, a sudden chill running down her spine. And with that nature, she lost her home, her name, and her peace. Though she built again, her nights were filled with rustling voices she could never silence, echoes of the ignored warning. Efe, now in her 50s, tired and haunted, sat by a dying fire. The god, older still, was visible nearby. She clutched a warm blanket, shivering occasionally, even though it wasn't cold. Russell, Russell, always rustling, she whispered to herself. They never stopped. She looked around the small room as if trying to locate the source of the whispers, though nothing was there but shadows. Her younger brother, Kola, gentle and observant, entered, carrying a bowl of stew. Efe jumped, startled, urging him to make a sound, explaining that the whispers were everywhere, speaking of what was lost, of the poison pen. Kola, concerned, tried to reassure her it was only the rain, but Efe insisted the warning had been real. He had tried to warn her, she said, but she had been so sure she knew better. Now her name was just a memory to some, and her small dwelling was all that remained of her home. She shivered again, pulling the blanket tighter as Kola placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. The third gentle Kola was a dreamer. He listened more than he spoke, observing the world with a quiet intensity. He understood the subtitles, the hidden current beneath the surface of things. Kola, now in his 40s, calm and thoughtful, stood before the stern village elders. Elder Olu warned him against baseless accusations. Kola took a deep breath. He had observed a hidden wrong. He explained. The river taxes were levied unfairly, causing the poor to suffer while the powerful strive. The elders murmured, some uneasy, others narrowing their eyes. Elder Olu demanded proof. Kola hesitated, remembering a fleeting whisper from his childhood. Speak now, or silence will bury you. His resolve hardened. He has seen the ledger spoken to the people, seen the hunger in the children's eyes. His own sister, he added, knew the cause of silence. Elder Olu's cough, questioning if he listened to old wives' tales, if he challenged tradition. I listen to what is true, Kola responded, his voice steady. And sometimes truth whispers from unexpected places. This village, it is sick. And if we do not expose the rot, it will consume us all. I would rather speak and be scorned than remain silent and watch us wither. A tense silence hung in the air. The elders exchanged looks, and Elder Olu finally considered that they would consider his words. Kola bowed and walked out, his head held high, a quiet strength radiating from him. The elders remained, their murmurs now agitated. And though they scorned him, the village changed. Kola died early, but not in vain. His words, once whispered, became the foundation of a new understanding, a quiet revolution born of truth. Kola in his 50s lay frail on a simple mat, clearly ill. The god nearby was deeply cracked, almost crumbling. Zino, his 5-year-old daughter, sharp and observant, sat by his side. Kola, weak but clear, pointed a trembling finger at the god. It had spoken to him, he told her, telling him to speak. They had scorned him, yes, but the village had begun to change. They had seen the truth. Zino asked if it had ought to speak. Kola smiled. Sometimes, he replied, but silence will have ought more. Listen, Zino, he hushed. Listen to the whispers, not just with your ears, but with your heart. Some wisdom, it does not shout. Kola coughed, then closed his eyes, his breathing shallowing. Zino watched him, her young eyes absorbing every detail. The god on the shelf emitted a faint, sad hum. Then came Zino, the last of the line, born during eclipse, with eyes dark as whetstone and a mind sharp as stone. She carried the weight of generations of ignored wisdom, a burden she was yet to understand. Zino in her 20s, striking and intelligent, paced her small owned. The god, barely holding together with twine, sat in the family shrine, looking ancient and fragile. Her grandmother in her 80s, frail but with a deep knowing gaze, watched her. Zino, frustrated, complained about the god's constant low hum, his persistent whisper. It was a drone, she said, distracting her from her plans for the new market, for bringing modern ways to the village. The god began to hum louder, more insistently. Turn back. Zino clapped her hands over her ears. Stop it. Just stop, she shouted over the whisper. Old things don't guide new roads. My generation is different. We don't need to be shackled by the past, by superstitions. Her grandmother's voice, weak but clear, insisted it was wisdom, not superstition, passed down through the generation. Zino's eyes flashed with anger, and look where listening got them. She cried. Ayomide crippled, a fell losing everything, and Papa Papa died so young. No, I forged my own path. She walked directly to the shrine. Her face set in defiance. The god's whisper intensified, becoming a desperate plea. Do not, catastrophe awaits. Zino's grandmother cried out, but Zino ignored her. With a fierce cry of frustration, she lifted the god high and smashed it against the stone floor. Shells scattered like teeth across the shrine floor, the sound echoing ominously. A sudden chilling silence descended. Zino stood, panting, a strange mix of triumph and unease on her face. Her grandmother stared, wide-eyed with horror. Zino declared it was gone. No more whispers. No more old wisdom holding her back. But even as she spoke, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper emanated from the air itself. It was no longer localized to the god. It is gone. A disembodied voice whispered, pervasive. It lives now everywhere. Zino froze, her eyes darting around the room, searching. The whisper seemed to come from the walls, the air, even from within our own head. And still, the whisper came. Now it lived in the wind, in the mirrors, in the mouth of strangers who spoke words that did not mean to say. It had found new vessels. Zino, looking haggard and constantly glancing around, walked through the village market. She bumped into an old woman selling yams, who in a flat, almost mechanical voice declared, "The path you walk, it leads to sorrow. Child, not joy." Zino recoiled, staring at the woman, who then blinked, as if coming out of a trance, and looked confused. Zino shook her head, rushing away. She passed a group of children playing, and one little boy in a surprising deep echoing voice, not his own, stated at her. The warnings were clear. Now, the story begins. Zino gasps, spinning around. The children looked at her, confused by her reaction. Zino hurried into a deserted alley, pulling out a small hand mirror. In the reflection, her own lips moved, but the voice that spoke was not hers. It was the ancient whisper. Because the message had grown too large for the god. It had waited 4 generations only to be on the ground. She backed away, terrified. The wind picked up, swirling around her, and in its moon, they say, Zino wandered far after that she began to dream again. But the dream weren't hers. Each night, a voice she never met would finish her sentences. Each step forward felt like a step backward towards something ancient and unfinished. Zino, older now, in her 40s, thin and wide-eyed, laid calmly on a mat in a dilapidated hut. twitching in her sleep, clearly tormented. In her dream, she was in a dark, swirling void surrounded by a cacophony of voices. One whispered, "The drumbeat leads to," and Zino, terrified, finished the sentence, "ruined." Another whispered, "The pen is," and Zino, desperate, cried, "Poison." A third voice, "Silence will," and Zino, despairing, finished, "Bury me." The whispers became a roar, overwhelming her. Zino jolted awake, panting, covered in sweat. She scrambled up, running a hand through her disheveled hair. She walked to the window, staring out at the moonless night. "It never stops," she whispered to herself. "Never, even in my sleep. What do you want? What do you want from me?" Suddenly, a gust of wind blew through the open window, carrying it with a distant, clear whisper. "Return, return to the source. The broken pieces, they remember." Zino froze. Listen, for the first time, there was a direction, a purpose to the torment. Her eyes, though still haunted, held a flicker of something new. Understanding, perhaps even a silver of hope. Some say she returned home in secret, planted the broken gourd pieces beneath a tree, and that tree now hums with the wind when the wind passes, a living echo of the ancient wisdom. Zino, older but with a newfound serenity, sat beneath a massive ancient tree. Around its root, barely visible, lay small buried fragments of the gourd. As the wind passed through the leaves, the tree emitted a distant, almost melodic hum. A young woman, a descendant, approached the tree. Drawn by the sound, she placed her hand on the tree trunk. The hum intensified, and a soft, rhythmic whisper emerged from the tree itself. If you stand beneath it, if your bloodline is right, you may hear what was once a whisper, now thundered in waiting. The young woman looked around, startled. Then her gaze fell on Zino. Zino offered a small knowing smile, having finally found her peace. The young woman looked at the tree, then back at Zino, a question in her eyes. Zino simply nodded, encouraging her to listen. Some wisdom does not die when ignored. It simply awaits. It grows teeth, and when the last child refuses to listen, the warning becomes the story, and the story never forgets. It echoes through generations, a silent testament to the price of deviance and the enduring power of truth. The ghost whisper, once dismissed, now weaves itself into the very fabric of existence, waiting for the one who will finally eat its call. The cycle continues, not as a curse, but as a lesson etched into the wind, the earth, and the very bloodline